Body of Nine. What if you understood what the numbers actually meant? Like, what's the difference between the odd numbers and even numbers in the Body of Nine system? That's what we're going to talk about today. What do the numbers mean, and how are they in relationship to each other? And what do they tell you about yourself and other people?
And so, Body of Nine. What's Body of Nine about?
Go for it.
So, even though there are 7-8 billion people in the world, there's actually 9 really physiologically different kinds of people. And in your body, there are 9 centers. And one of those centers is born active and determines your physical reality. How you experience the world, what you care about, how you move. Because one of the interesting facts that comes along with your, what we call natural number, is that in relationships and in families, those numbers don't tend to repeat. Because your natural number determines your reality and the person you're with doesn't share your reality, that leads to huge amounts of misunderstandings. What we want to do today is help you understand some of those by just looking at where the numbers are in the body, and where they are in the body actually has an awful lot to do with how that particular natural number, that person experiences the world.
And the numbers in relationship act together in different ways. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that means. So there are 9 centers in the body, 3 in the head, 3 in the chest, and 3 in the torso. The 3 in the head, turns out, are odd numbers.
There's number 5.
1, 5,
number
7, and number 1. And then the 3 in the chest are 3 and 6 and 9. So 2 odds and 1 even. 9's on the spine between the shoulder blades. And then the torso is 2 and 4 and 8, the even numbers. The core even numbers.
The core even numbers.
Yes. So that's one sequence that's kind of interesting. So, and if you go from bottom up, all the even numbers are in the lower half of the body, and all the odd numbers are in the upper half of the body, which is in itself very interesting.
Yes. And my natural number's 5, up the top here. I'm sort of suspended, a bit like a puppet. And as we will discuss, these numbers are very much more non-body focused, as it will. Number 3 to some extent as well. So the odd numbers are a little bit more odd, whereas the even numbers are a little bit more body based, a little bit more physical. And that can lead to all sorts of misunderstandings. And I can give you an example of a misunderstanding that happened just today. We were discussing how we were going to present this, and Susan talked about order. And for me, order has a specific meaning because words are important to the head types, as it turns out. But sequence is also more important to me. So when Susan was talking about order and I was talking about sequence, we became to a core understanding about how we communicate. And so just knowing that the even numbers and the odd numbers communicate and use their wisdom and get their wisdom from very different places.
Very different places. So we often talk about the odd numbers as being less embodied. And more spiritually oriented. By spiritual, we mean aware of the energies of unembodied energies, non-present energies, spiritual, whatever your words and your relationship are with it. But if you're a 1, a 5, or a 7, you're going to have a different relationship with the infinite.
And 3 to some extent.
And yes, 3, yes, absolutely. And even 9, because 9 is that borderline.
Yeah, 9's kind of a bit of both.
It's like the bridge between the physical and the spiritual.
And people have asked us, and it's a fair question, I think, where do these numbers come from? And the honest answer is, we have no idea. They were led to us through the people that taught us, and they learned from the Enneagram, and the Enneagram learned from Gurdjieff, and where Gurdjieff understood, we really
But it was also confirmed in the research about the Egyptians.
Yes.
So the Egyptians and Gurdjieff seem to be aligned about the numbers and the placement about the numbers.
Yes. So, the Gurdjieff, they had reality, and there were other ways of looking at the world. Japan and China and India each have their own different ways of expressing the same information about the 9. So we're very comfortable that the numbers exist, and we're very comfortable how they interact, because it's not just odd versus even. There's other pairings, triplets, that make some really interesting discoveries, if you will. As Susan said, 3, 6, 9 are all in the chest. And if you do some numerology, 3 and 6 become 9, and 9 plus 9 becomes 3. And so there's some really interesting things that happen when you start combining numbers.
No, 9 plus 9 becomes 9.
9 plus 9 becomes 9, yes.
9 is always this It only increases the volume. It never changes the numerological result of an equation.
That's right, yes.
So in
Correct.
numerology, you take a number, and then you add, like if it's 1,284, you would add the 1 to the 2 to the 8 to the 4, and then you would keep going down until you...
15, which would give you 6.
Thank you very much. He can do that really fast because it's in his map.
And this may sound strange because most of the time we're talking about bodies and we're talking about how does your body inform you, what is it that your body's telling you. But we thought we'd take this opportunity to start exploring, okay, why are the numbers important? Why don't we use ABC or alpha, gamma, omega, any other system? And the answer is that the numbers actually predict things.
Yes.
If you look at how the numbers lay out, if you look at where the bits in the numbers are, we've used the numbers to make predictions, which is an important part of the scientific method. And yes, there is scientific method behind what we do. We make predictions based on what we know about the numbers. And we've learned things from other people by talking to them saying, well, we know these numbers are related. How does this particular thing affect you? And there's always an answer. So it is fascinating and a little bit mental, this stuff. Mental as in, it's all in the mind, not mental as in strange.
And if you follow Martin and I on What If Wednesdays, you'll notice that when we talk about body-based things that I am more able to keep up. When he starts to go into the number sequences and stuff, it's like, I'm like, oh. It takes me a little longer to follow him. So if it's taking you a little longer to follow him and your number is even, that's one of the reasons. So we don't necessarily process information in the same way based off of our natural number.
It's actually not even necessarily completely processing information. How we make decisions is completely different. And knowing that the person you're with very, very likely doesn't process things the same way you do, may take longer, they may be quicker, they may respond, they may be more energetic. It's all about the natural numbers. For example, one of the things that we found very early on, and it's still a little bit experimental, is that it seems that people that have a couple that have one even and one odd number tend to have a life just a little bit smoother than people that have two even numbers or two odd numbers. However, communication is much easier between two even numbers or two odd numbers. So
it's a funny paradox.
The interactions between people are fascinating, and there are some, and I'm going to use the word numerological because it's all we have, connections. We can, when we talk to people, when we identify you and identify your family, we will tell you things that people have told us. And then there's only 81 combinations.
And you'll start to observe the same kinds of things that we observe as you examine how your family interacts. And it's really true. Odd numbers have a slightly easier time communicating with other odd numbers and evens with the other evens. I never really thought about that, but it's absolutely true. Mm-hmm. But the conflicts also happen more easily within the odds and
I
within
think
the
that's
evens.
because some of the concepts are similar, but very different. And by that I mean a prime example between number 2 and number 4. They're both very much about relationship, but how they approach relationship and how they build relationship and the depth of relationship, pretty much every part of relationship between people is very, very different between 2 and 4, but they will both say that they're very much about connection and relationship.
Connection and engagement and relationship. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Which is why.
And authenticity.
Yes.
Those are probably 4 shared words.
Yes.
The 2s and 4s, but they mean something really, really different between them. But they're both even, so they're both dealing with the physical relationship that we have with each other.
And they're both making decisions about, based on their emotions, how they're going to feel about something or how do they feel about something.
Yes.
So
you get similarities within the even numbers and similarities within the odds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 5 and the 7s and to some extent the 1s are very, very esoteric in some ways. They'll think and they'll make models and think Einstein.
More intellectual conversation, more exploration, more curiosity. Mm-hmm. Those are kind of built into the 157 at a much more active level. It's not that 2, 4, 6s and 8s aren't curious.
Not at all.
But it's not the thing that drives us. Our physical world is what drives us much more than the intellectual curiosity that you'll see often expressed by 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9.
And part of the fun part of being a 5, in my experience, is that my intellectual curiosity helps get into my bodily curiosity. And what is my body telling me? And it's been great to have the experience to be able to learn, well, my body is actually a really useful tool to be able to listen to, but it's not something that informs me more than just a dashboard in a car would inform me. The little orange light is on, it's time to change the oil, I'm hungry. But if I need to, I can drive for a little bit longer with a little orange light flashing. Of course, eventually the light goes red, my car's broken, and if I don't eat, same thing happens to me.
Yes. Whereas for me, it's like it always starts with how do I feel, what's going on in the energy, and then it moves into the curiosity place. An intellectual curiosity always follows some energetic flag for me, for example.
Exactly, yes. And so we think Einstein had natural number 5,
Yeah.
and Einstein was always going on about the grand unified theory of everything. And yeah, me too. Grand unified theory of everything sounds a lot of fun.
That sounds like way too much work to me. I kind of like what's going on right now in this minute with you.
Yes, this is always the fun part.
It
and
is.
that was part of the growth that you can get by learning about your natural number and then learning all the others, because as you get the other natural numbers into your body, then your body shifts and what you like to do and how you can do things become a lot easier. My ability to interact with people, to connect to people, to engage with people is vastly superior than it was before I started this work. And as I've said many, many times, I got into computers because if I'm fed up with a computer, I can turn it off. Hard to do that in a relationship. But now...
Yeah, we don't like that when that happens.
and you know, you see 5s and 7s and sometimes even 1s separate themselves. They just step back and step away just to be able to let the chaos, if you will, of emotions go by. And that's not always the healthiest thing in the world, but it is a coping mechanism.
Yeah, it is. Are there comments? Can we tell?
There were no comments I would be able to see.
Okay, that's really cool. All right, somebody make a comment for us so that we know that you're there.
Well, 4 people are watching. So
Yes, I can see that. That's really cool. Hi, 4 people. Who's there? Tell us who's there. That way we can tell if our comment thing is working. But anyway, so we were talking about 1, 5, and 7 in the head and 3, 6, and 9 in the chest, which is about energy, which is very different. And 3 and 9 are about spiritual energy or universal energy. 3 is very much about spirit energy. 9 is about universal, and 6 is about the energy that's present in everything all of the time.
Hi, Gwen. Thanks for the comment.
Oh, hi, Gwen. Gwen and I were high school friends.
Cool.
She lived in my house in my senior year of high school.
It is a small world.
We definitely have to Zoom, Gwen, and catch up.
So, yeah, this is, as I've said, this is a less body-based presentation this time through. So,
Hi, Wendy.
so Susan's talking about energy. Well, energy is, again, not body-based, but our bodies feel it. I'm going to make a comment about, in the 1850s, when they discovered radio waves, it's not like radio waves didn't exist before the 1850s. Okay, there was no radio, but there was electric disturbances in the world. A lightning storm was throwing electricity around the world, and no one could detect it. And somebody called Hertz came and said, well, I think there were radio waves. And everyone said, well, okay, you're smart. Maybe there's radio waves. And then 10 years later, they could detect it. We're going to make a statement that there are other kinds of forces, waves and things floating around that we currently can't detect.
Except through our bodies.
Except through our bodies.
Right.
And a while ago, a bunch of scientists got together and said, we're going to see if an ether exists. Is there something that is not detectable by any of our instruments that exists? Now, I'm going to point out that that's kind of an interesting statement. Can I detect something that's not detectable? Well, they didn't detect it because whatever.
As of yet?
As of yet,
it was not detectable.
However, if you are a natural number 9 and I say to you, you understand when they say feel the force, that's because as a natural number 9, you are connected to what I believe is that ether.
So each of the natural numbers has a special detector built into the body.
Yeah.
So when you learn to activate a particular region of your body, first your natural number, which is naturally active, it gives you information, essentially one set of frequencies, right? And then when you learn to activate another, all of a sudden you're getting new information. And it takes a while to kind of learn to tune that channel.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't necessarily make sense.
Absolutely. I keep saying absolutely. It's my word of the day.
It's your word of the month.
My word of the month. Maybe even my word of the year, but that's been that kind of year. Another way to look at this is imagine a radio dial, a radio, that has 9 stations on it. And right now, you can barely hear what one station's saying. It's full of static, and every now and again, you hear the odd word, and it's kind of interesting. Once you get your natural number identified, once you connect to yourself, that radio station becomes loud and clear, and you can hear that one radio station. But there's 8 others. And as you learn to activate each of the other 8 centers in your body, because you have all 9 of them, you can hear all 9 of those radio stations. Some of them may be rock, some of them may be easy listening. There may be a comedy channel, because life can be pretty funny.
Yes, and relating this to today's topic, once you learn to, like when I first learned to activate 5, all of a sudden I became less embodied. I was more connected. I was more aware of my surroundings than I normally am. So as a 5, he operates with less of a body based awareness than I do as a 6, or Wendy does as a 2. What this means is the numbers are telling you something, right?
Understand?
Yes.
If you think one of your friends is walking to the beat of a different drummer, well, they probably are.
That's right.
And
8
when
out of 9 of them
I
are.
first activated natural number 6, and it scared the living daylights out of me because everything was vibrant. I could feel the molecules vibrating in the wall. Whoa, what just happened?
And for me as a 6, like, yes, I can always do this, so what's the big deal?
Yes.
Right? So what you do, the specialness of what you do, you don't think is a big deal, but believe me, it's huge.
Yes.
It's huge, and it's special, it's powerful.
We
and it's
spend a fair
important.
amount of time getting groups of the same natural number together, at least we did last year. And we had a bunch of natural number 5s together, and we had a great time, we chatted, and then every one of them said, well, I didn't learn anything new, I knew all that anyway, and moved back on. So you know about yourself. And the reason that we can identify over Zoom is that all we're doing is telling you about the truth of you.
Yeah, I mean, he mentioned the term identification. I don't think we've really talked about that, but you can find out your natural number on a Zoom call with us. What we do is we look at your face, the shape of your face, the muscular hold, the quality of your eyes,
How big your head is,
how big your head is, the shape of your head, the shape of your body.
how do your eyes look?
Yes, and the energetic signature, and then how do you resonate with what we know about that natural number?
Because we've worked with 8,000 people, and we constantly ask questions, and we're still learning. Every time we work with someone, we learn something new, maybe something little, something big. And when we learn the big stuff, and we test it with a lot of people of that natural number, we pass it along.
It becomes part of the repertoire of what we tell you about what's it like to be you.
So we don't make stuff up. We listen to what you say, and then we test it to make sure that the other people with your natural number agree.
Steve Von Lindren's on today.
Yes,
Steve is also a high school buddy of mine.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get hold of some of my high school buddies.
That's
obviously.
right. It's good to see you guys. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate it. Then we talked about the body, which is 2, 4, and 8. And 2, 4, and 8 are very, very body based. It's all about what they experience in their bodies, what their body is telling them, how they're feeling, how they want to feel. So head is kind of spiritual. Body, the chest is energetic, and
Almost too intellectual. there.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Sometimes, I mean, we can kind of, when we lose connection to the power of our natural number, we can kind of go too deep in a particular direction.
Yeah, and so one of the interesting things, of course, is that energy has its own flavor, has its own speed, has its own impact. Thought has its own speed, has its own impact. And then the body has its own pace and has its own impact. Which means that if I turn up as full of energy and the person I'm talking to is not, there could be a huge misunderstanding. And we've covered before, 53+% of all communication is just the way the body is. And then there's another 37% about the tone of the speech. And the remaining few percent is about the actual words. And guess what? Those words are very, very different too. So it's surprising to me sometimes that we can even communicate at all.
At all.
And
It's
I
true,
think
because the way we use our pace, our energetic signature, our skills and gifts are very, very different one to the next between the natural numbers.
And I could go around pretending I was a 6 and being all, but it wouldn't be authentic. I can do 6, but there's an element of doing it to fake it to make it for any of the natural numbers, but there is still our bodies communicate. So unless I'm really there, which takes a bit of practice, then the people I'm with know that I'm practicing. I'm not really a 6. I'm just being 6. So people know who you are. Your body's
yes,
communicate.
that is all very true, and it's still very honoring.
Oh, it's very honoring.
If you
yes.
just try to meet me at where
Yes.
I live, it feels good.
Yeah, it feels.
know?
And this is honouring the deepest part of you,
And the part of you that you know is you. It's like when I was first identified 20 years ago, I was affected profoundly because it described the part of me that I knew and loved, and nobody else ever seemed to understand. People get attracted to that part of me, but they don't really know why, and then it can scare them to death as well. So it's at least I got to love who I was when I find out. Even I had to realize that not everybody is going to love who I am.
And so it's very clear that we give and receive love from our natural number. So your parents, with any luck at all, gave you love from their natural number. So you're used to receiving love from people of that natural number. And the people that you see, date, interact with, they are used to receiving love and interaction from people with a different natural number. So if there's somebody you really like and they don't get on with you at all, it's probably not about you. It's about them not understanding that ability. So if you could learn to activate their natural number, you may find that that's kind of an interesting.
Or just even an understanding, like, oh, Tia, are they an odd or an even?
Yeah.
Started to get curious about.
Do they move their head? Do they move their hips?
Yes, because the head types, they move their heads a ton. But for me, head movement is for the chest types.
Susan can't even move her head. You watch, she's moving her chest.
It's attached to the chest.
So
I have to work really hard to loosen the head up from my chest, and try to do something, gesticulate with my head. But 1, 5, and 7 gesticulate with their head all the time.
And you'll find natural number 7, for example, they greet each other with their head nod. It's kind of everyone has micro movements. It's really fascinating.
Yes, lots of micro movements. So if you start to learn and to recognize and see them, you can recognize, are they an odd number? Are they an even number?
What words did they use? Do they talk about their feelings? Do they talk about intellectual things versus body things? Are they talking about energy? The words we use are really, really good pointers to what people's natural numbers are.
Yes.
And all this stuff's written down in that book, of course.
Yes, it is written down in our book. We just finished last October a comprehensive description of this entire system. So every natural number, the physiology, the gifts and skills, how to support a person of that natural number, how to parent a person of that natural number. So there's a tremendous amount of information in our book, because you can get it on Amazon, and it's called The Body of 9, Decode Your Natural Physiology and Discover Your True Self. But we recommend that you get identified before you try to read the book, because it's a complex system. 9 is a lot of numbers to deal with. Humanity, I think it's part of why we don't know about this out in humanity, because it's too complex, and we're never alone in a group with 30 people of our own natural number. That just never.
We will be having
happens.
Sometime next year. We will be starting to open up physical in-person events again. Thanks again for watching. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Yes, get identified. It's the funnest and most enlightening thing you can do.